Alrighty. Well, welcome to another episode in the Run Breiter Podcast. Today we have an awesome episode planned, episode number 21, and really excited to say that we are bringing on Stefan. Now, Stefan is someone who I've actually never met in person. He's someone that I really just connected through the digital running community, ended up seeing a little bit of his running journey, and we ended up following each other, and he's now looking at mine. So both ends, we share a lot of similar interests, and I figure, he has some great stories regarding running. Specifically, what I'm excited to hear about is some of the ultra marathons that you've done, Stefan, as I'm someone who has never experienced those races, but it does intrigue me. So I would love to first hand it off to you. I would love to get an introduction on who you are and just some basic background information on you for those who don't know you here.
Yeah, first off, I just want to say thank you so much for asking me to be on the show. I'm really honored. This is the first time somebody I've never met before has reached out to me on social media and asked me to be a guest on their show. So really appreciative to be here. But yeah, I guess a little bit about myself. I grew up in New Jersey. Your audience, I think you're based in New York, so you might know Oradell. I live in Colorado now, so when I say Oradell, nobody knows what I'm talking about. But Paramus, Bergen County, for those not familiar. Grew up running cross country track in like middle school, high school. My dream was always to live in Colorado. I read the book Ultramarathon Man when I was a freshman in high school, and that was the first introduction I had into running, or like what an ultramarathon even was. And so after reading that book, my goal was immediately to just try and build a life where I could be outside trail running as much as possible. In between getting out to Colorado, though, I went to school at Ohio State. Got an undergraduate degree in nutrition. In college, I transitioned from, that like cross country track in high school kind of stuff over to running some marathons in college. And then once I graduated, I moved out to Denver, where I've been mostly doing ultra marathons since I moved out here. And I'm actually going for my master's in nutrition right now in grad school. So trying my best to make a career out of this whole running thing.
That's awesome. I love that story. And I didn't realize you went to Ohio State. I'm sure you probably see the little flag behind me. I went to Ohio University. So
You did.
yeah, we both share some similar backgrounds of, growing up in that New York, New Jersey area, going to college in Ohio, and then falling in love with running ultimately, both between high school and staying involved with it while in college. Obviously, you were doing marathons there, which is awesome. But yeah, I mean, I would love to hear, obviously you mentioned really something that really led you to going to Denver was you wanted to be outside as much as possible and just be a trail runner and enjoy that lifestyle. How has that been going for you? Because I'm in New York City. We don't really have as many trails as there are in Colorado, of course. But like, how long have you been in Colorado, and how has that experience been since you've moved from Jersey to Ohio to Colorado?
Yeah, so it's been success is not linear. It's kind of just like a big zigzaggy path. When I was in high school and I like painted this future for myself, I think we all like have an imagination and we're all like, well, one day I'll live life like XYZ. And then you go through life and it's a big zigzaggy mess. So the transition was not the easiest. So I've been out here in Colorado for about 5.5 years now. In college, probably did a little bit too much partying at OSU. College was a good time, I won't lie. But
But
transitioning
it's hard
from
to
that,
not at OSU.
yeah, I mean, it's hard to not do that over there. The marathons were great goals back then, but they were definitely it was definitely a party mixed with the training. And then transitioning that into I guess you could call it real life was not the smoothest. I moved out to Denver. I had no friends. My grandmother passed away pretty quickly after I moved out here. And starting young professional life, I was doing outside sales for a few years in between graduating and what I'm doing now. And so transitioning to a new life was not the easiest. I wish I could say I moved out here and immediately started trail running, but it definitely took me a year or two of even living here to really start getting outside and enjoying the trails the way that I do these days. Because now it's like, if you have the time, you're in the mountains and it's great.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, I mean, I know you mentioned too that you're currently studying nutrition. You're getting your graduate degree there. Are you, and I may have missed this, and I'm sorry if I did, are you also like working like a full-time job right now? I know obviously on the run, like you're working on some of your own content and coaching. Is that kind of like your main source of income, or are you working a job right now?
Yeah, that's a good question. So when I transitioned from outside sales role to grad school, it was pretty tough. I mean, I basically gave up like a decently well-paying job to be a broke grad school student. It's one thing when you're an undergrad, like that's kind of expected, but now that I'm 27 now, it's not the most fun life to live. But so the first year I was in grad school, I worked at a running store. My goal right now is to try my best to accumulate as many skills as I can in the running industry to create a career for myself as a running coach and a nutrition consultant. So I did the running store for 1 year, and then just for flexibility, I've been driving Uber part time with grad school full time.
Very nice, very nice. How was that experience working at a running store? Because I'm sure you built a lot of skills as far like obviously we all wear running shoes, all runners do at least. I mean, some people go barefoot, but most
Yeah,
runners are wearing running shoes. And I personally have tried out a lot of different pairs of running shoes ever since I started Run Brighter, mostly because I'm trying to give the community some information about the shoes that work, the shoes that don't, rather than sticking with the same pair. But I'm sure working at the store you probably learned so much not only about all the different models out there, but also like getting feedback from people, how the different shoes are made and what types of runners they are engineered for. So I'd love to hear about how that experience was working at the running store.
yeah. So the first thing that's really funny is when you think of like when I had the expectation of what it would be like to work at a running store is a lot different than what it was. You know, you imagine yourself working at a running store, talking to marathon runners and ultra runners all day long, and people who are like really passionate, but like I mean, more than half the people that come in there are just looking for some walking shoes. And like they just don't share the same passion that you do. And that's okay. But it was really cool being able to learn about like how to fit a certain shoe to like a certain athlete and like what goes into the design of a shoe and what it's good for. I just think that's going to be very helpful down the road, like transitioning into like a coaching career, because everybody always asks like, what's the right shoe for me? Um, and the right shoe for you is not the same shoe for me or you or I don't know, my roommate, somebody else. Like everyone's different, you know, we're all built differently. We all need something different that'll make us successful.
Yeah. And I'm glad you said that because one of my next questions was going to be like, do you have like certain brands or certain models that you see working better than others? But from what I've heard, and I'm glad you agree, it's different for everyone. So then after the running store, you worked there for a year. Now it sounds like you're just trying to get this nutrition degree as well as you're balancing that out with some of the coaching that you're doing on the side. How is the coaching going for you? How's that experience?
It's funny you bring that up. I haven't done a whole lot of coaching. I'm trying to get it started right now. Really just trying to start creating some content and get a brand going. Outside of coaching some friends, I mean, I've gotten paid a few times for helping individuals on the side, but for the most part, a lot of my experience is like helping people that I've known throughout the years and still doing that.
I'd be really curious though, with some of the runners that you've worked with and the runners that you plan on working with, what are some of your best practices and advice with running? Let's say more like a beginner runner, someone who's new to running. We'll start with
Mhm.
that. I'd be really curious what you would have to share with that.
Yeah, that's a great question. So for a new runner, this is really tough piece of advice for a lot of people to swallow, but my biggest piece of advice for a new runner is to be patient.
Yeah.
I mean, I ran Moab 240 last year, and a lot of people I think were maybe caught off guard on like that I'm friends with on like social media. They were just like, wow, Stefan just did this incredible thing. But what they like fail to remember is that I started running. I've been running for 15 years now, so it was 14 years up to that point. There's like 14 years of work that leads up to this moment that so many people are just mesmerized by, I think. And you can't get to that overnight. To be successful, you have to be really like you have to attack what you're trying to do in the short term strategically, but you also have to be like patient. It's like a really tough mix, I think, for a lot of people to comprehend.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the patience is huge, and I like am someone that can attest to that as well, just due to the fact that whether it's running a race you've never done before, consistently having running part of your routine, or PRing in a race, that patience part, the mental part is really, I think, one of the biggest reasons people have a hard time sticking with it. But I think like
Yeah,
subconsciously just being aware of that, right? And knowing that you got to go into this journey being patient And when there might be some days where you're feeling a little off, you're cramping, maybe getting sore, just being patient with the process is so key. And I'm sure you can agree with that from your experience too.
Yeah, that plus the fact that like running is a repetitive sport, right? And because of that, a lot of new runners like they get injured at the beginning. So it's really important to tell people, you might have some hiccups, but you just got to stick with it, and then the rewards will pay off.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I'd be curious too. I want to learn a little bit more about like your journey and some of what you're working on with running and what you've done in the past. So I know you mentioned this, and I saw this on your page. You obviously ran that 240 mile ultra. I think you've done also like a couple, and correct me if I'm wrong here, a couple 100-mile type races as well. I'd love to hear about like some of your favorite race type experiences or just like running experiences, whether it's a race or not that you've had. I mean, I think a couple cool stories on that would be really cool to hear.
Oh man, there's a lot at this point. Yeah, so I just ran my seventh 100-mile or greater distance event now last month. Some of my favorite races, I mean, Moab 240 was probably my favorite just because of it was the best and the worst. So it took me 104 hours to finish, which is like just under 4.5 days. Yeah, I know. It's like the best and the worst 4.5 days of your entire life. I'm trying to think like there's a lot of stories just from that race. That was one of my favorites. I mean, I try to sign up for new and different races all the time because so what matters to me is like being challenged. I get a lot personally out of overcoming adversity in what I would call ultra marathons, a relatively controlled environment. And I think in those like controlled environments where you can challenge yourself are really where you can like get to know who you are when you're trying to respond to something like a difficult situation. It's really easy to be like a nice person or like treat people around you well. For example, when like there's peace in your life or when things are going well. But I think that like who each of us are really comes out when times are challenging. And that's why I really love looking for like challenging races. Some of my favorites outside of like Moab would be like the race I ran last month, Mogollon Monster 100, Silver Heels 100 out here in Colorado in Fairplay. Never Summer 100K, really beautiful, rugged, tough 100K. Bighorn 100 up in Wyoming. It's also great. Like running ultras is a great like excuse to travel.
Yeah.
But yeah, and there's a lot of stories from like each of those each of those experiences, as you could imagine.
First of all, really impressive. Like I just can't believe how many of these you've done, and you don't seem burnt out by it. You seem excited for the next challenges and the next races, and you want to try out all these new races, which is great. What
Mm-hmm.
made you first be like, okay, like let's try out these ultras? Because listen, I'm running these marathons now, and I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. After the races, I feel really sore. It takes a lot out of me mentally, physically, and the thought of running even another half mile than that just it just doesn't seem like something that like I'm not there yet personally, but
Yeah.
that's I think a lot of it can be just like the pace that I'm running up, obviously, but I mean, I think also running for 3 hours or whatever it takes me, that also like that's part of the challenge. So, what allowed you to really take that first step? And then, what advice would you have for someone like me who, of course, has ran long periods, has been running for a long time, but hasn't taken that ultra step?
First thing I want to say is that a lot of people. So you haven't run an ultra yet. Let's put the word "yet" in there. Um, but I I think a lot of people who have done marathons but not an ultra yet don't realize that marathon training is. I would actually argue that it's a lot harder than ultra marathon training, and the races are also harder but in a different way. When you're training for a marathon, it's a lot more structured than training for an ultra needs to be. You can get away with like running slow. Like every training run could be slow when you're
Yeah.
training for an ultra. I ran my first 100-miler off like like 40, 45-mile weeks. I mean, granted, I was doing some like trail, like a lot of vert in there too, but the training for a marathon is a lot faster if you're especially trying to BQ, which a lot of people are. Followed your posts. I know you're going for that too.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, a lot of respect to the marathon. It's definitely harder to train for. And then the other thing to keep in mind is that when you transition to the trails, you're not pounding on concrete all the time, right? And when you're not pounding on concrete all the time, the amount of force that's being applied to your knees, your hips, your back, it's not as much as like a trail race. So I actually would say I felt better after my first 50 miler than I did in any of the marathons that I've run on the road. And I don't know if you want to make any sort of bet on here. I bet you'd feel the same way when you take that leap.
Yeah, I mean, well, I will say that is I didn't think of the fact that running on concrete compared to running on the trails, the effect that that would have. Um, I do feel better running on trails than concrete, but still, it's double the distance of a race in my mind. So that's good to know, though, that after the
Yeah.
like the way you felt wasn't as severe. And I mean, on the training side of things too, I mean, you said you were doing like a 45 mile week when you first got set and ready for your first ultra. Is that correct?
Yeah, I guess I didn't totally answer your question from before, like how did that transition play out? So yeah, I ran Marine Corps Marathon in 2017 and I was shooting for a BQ, and after the race ended, I was just my legs were pretty trashed from just the concrete pounding. So I decided to shoot for my first 50 miler the year later, and I really just followed like it was basically the same thing as a marathon training plan, except I tried to just go slower in training and focus on like hitting the trails more. I think my long run for that was maybe 28 or 30 miles. And then when I trained for my first 100K and 100 miler, I was, yeah, still only, I peaked at like maybe a 50K training for my first 100K. And then I ran my first 100 miler like 2 months later after the 100K. So it all kind of like built into each other. It was, I don't know, the biggest thing when you're transitioning is you've got to like want it though. And like you said, I'm not burnt out because I love this sport. And um, yeah, you just have to enjoy it. And for me, that's not hard to do. I think if you like running, if you love running, and if you're looking for a different kind of challenge, ultras are a really great place to find that.
That's awesome. Now, with ultras for you, are you just running them at this point more for completion, the milestone of running these long distances and being able to feel good that you ran certain races and the enjoyment of traveling and seeing all these different courses? Or are you like shooting for time too? And I'd be curious your mindset with some of these races and what fulfills you on them.
Yeah, that's a great question actually, because I'm at that kind of transition phase in my career where I am starting to go from like you can run a race for either competency, like can you run the distance, or you can run a race for proficiency. And that's really where you're shooting for time and trying to challenge yourself to bring out like the best version of you on a given day. I would say it depends on the race. There's like when you're first starting off, I think competency is definitely the best thing to shoot for. I think it's most important to like no matter what should like the overarching goal, what no matter what you're doing should be to like enjoy what you're doing. Otherwise, there's really no point in like why would you go out and run 50 or 100 or more miles like if you're not having fun, right? So I'd say it like ebbs and flows. Um, I mean, I'm running 100K. I'm running Black Canyon 100K in February, and if for that race in particular, I've run it before. I had my fun there, and now I'd like to go back there and run a really fast time next year. But then again, like I'm going to be running a few other races next summer where I probably won't be racing as hard, and I'm more so just going to be going to those races because they look cool, they look challenging, and I'm excited to meet some cool people out there and see some new views in a different part of the country I haven't been to before. So I don't think it has to be one or the other. You know, you can do both.
Definitely. That makes a lot of sense. And I mean, I'm the same way sometimes. There's certain races that I do just because, hey, it's a great experience and it's cool to like meet new people. Like you said, I think that's a very underrated part about running is when you go to these races, just meeting people with similar interests and talking about their experiences and getting different advice from them is really cool. Now, I'd also be really curious as well, like how often are you actually doing these races? Because you've named off so many. I mean, you're a little older than me, but you're still really young. You're 27, man. Like, I mean, it sounds like you've done a lot since you've moved out to Denver 5 years ago. So, how often are you actually running races?
Yeah. So, for example, this year I only raced 3 times. Um, Granted, all three of the races I did this year were 100 milers. And then in between, I did do some like through hikes, something I've been starting to get more into as like the distances of racing has gotten longer. I don't know. I find a lot of like enjoyment and fulfillment out of like the longer distances. Like running through the night in 100 is just a really cool experience. Something I don't know. I hope everybody like tries it one day, even if you're not trying to run 100 miles. Like go for just a 24-hour hike. It's really cool to see the sunrise twice.
It's really cool. Yeah.
But no, I'm not racing like a lot. Next year, I'm also looking at like 3 big races, no, 4 races, and then maybe a through hike somewhere in there.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. And so as it has to do with your training though, at this point, what is like a typical week of running looking like for you? Due to the fact that obviously it sounds like you're running one race a quarter, breaking it up understandably. I'm sure there's a bit of recovery that needs to happen after some of these races, although it sounds like from you, like probably not as bad as like a marathon from some of your past experiences, but still, when with training, what do you look at towards your personal plan?
Yeah, so I think the more you do longer races, your body has this like innate muscle memory where it definitely learns how to recover faster. I try to emphasize rest. That's a really important part of my schedule. I only run like 5 days a week usually. And in those 5 days, when I'm in like a heavy training block, I'm probably doing 60, 70 miles a week with a good chunk of it on the trails though. But I mean, that's a lot lower, I think, than I'm not going out and running 100+ mile weeks. I don't think I've ever had a 100+ mile week unless I was like hiking, which is something I also have started to learn this year that through hiking and backpacking has been in just amazing tool. I've run the best races of my ultra running career this year because I started adding those longer like multi-day hikes to my training. And so it's what's the word I'm looking for? It's atypical, I guess. Like people don't look at hiking as training, but with ultras it is because you're not running the entirety of these races. I mean, some of them are super steep. So I don't know. Rest is important. Take 1 or 2 days off a week. If I had to give people a few bullet points, I try to take a few weeks off at the end of every year, and before beginning like a new annual training block. So take off some time every year if you want to be in the sport for your whole life. And then yeah, you don't have like mileage matters the most. I think you'd probably agree with this. Like mileage matters the most when you're going for proficiency. But at the same time, it doesn't need to be like ridiculous. You don't need to do a hard day every day and do 100 miles a week. Like we're not all David Goggins.
Unfortunately not. Yeah, that's some really good advice. I'm asking for a little bit more advice too on the nutrition side of things.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're studying that, and I'm sure because you're studying that, and I'm sure because of just a passion for nutrition, I assume. I would love to hear. We'll start off with like what a typical week of eating looks like for you, knowing that you're running typically 60 to 70 miles in a given week, which is well more than most.
Yeah, I do love nutrition. It's been a really fun subject to study. I don't follow like a specific diet. There's a really good quote I'm probably going to butcher, but it's along the lines of eat food, mostly fruits and vegetables, a little bit of meat. I don't follow like a particular diet. I'm sure that if you're trying to like hone in, like if you're like Jim Walmsley, it makes more sense to do that. I'm not. I mean, if you're Mike McKnight running the 200 milers, the keto diet probably makes sense for that kind of race. Like it does have scientific. There is proof that would work for like a longer race like that. For me though, I try to follow in the morning. Like if you want like a typical day, like I love Jesse Isler's philosophy of fruit in the morning. So I try my best to start off with like some sort of just some sort of shake in the morning. Just like blend up some strawberries, bananas, whatever, blueberries, great for you. Get those antioxidants in early.
Oh yeah.
Lunch, avocados, nothing. Lunch is the one meal I could probably improve on, but I don't know. I eat grilled cheeses a lot. Probably not like the greatest thing. It's just like you need calories though. Sometimes you just got to do what you got to do for calories. And then for dinner, I try to keep everything like my diet. I do try to keep 80-20 in terms of 80% like veggie based and 20% like meat. So I don't know, fish is usually something I'll have like twice a week. And then the rest of the week, I'll make some sort of like tofu based dish. If there's one skill outside of running that people can acquire to become a better and healthier individual, it's definitely cooking though. And it's not always about making a big change all at once. Sometimes it's just like, I'm going to eat one more piece of fruit today and tomorrow for the rest of the week. And then maybe in a week or two, you add something else into the mix.
Definitely. Something that I am curious about too, and I'm going back to the topic on your obviously very extensive races and long run weeks that you have. I something that I'm always fascinated by is what people think about during their runs, right? Because for me, when I'm running and I'm running a long distance, it's really a great way to just clear my mind, get rid of stress, think about different plans for my life, for business goals that I have, whatever it might be. But I would love to hear from you, especially, and it can go for these long hikes that you're doing too. I mean, you have spent so much more time in a singular day running and hiking than I ever have. So I've never gotten to that mental point. So I'd be really curious what allows you to really get through those runs, what you're thinking about. Yeah.
Oof, that's a hard question. I feel it should be like a simple answer, but I think about like anything and everything. I try my best to use running to my advantage in terms of like it's great to turn off sometimes and just go for a run to decompress. Like we're all humans and we all need to do that, right? But at the same time, there's a big difference between getting caught up in the hype of having all these races on your calendar. It's really easy to just like get into like the grind of like, oh, I got this race and then this race and then this race or this goal and then that goal. And there are definitely people I think who like running because they have all those races on their calendars and it's an escape for them to not think about their problems. When ideally you should be using a good chunk of your time. I'm not telling people how they should run, like do whatever makes you happy. But I try my best to like use my time out on the trails to like think about my life and like really get to know myself. And I feel like I've been decently successful at that over the last few years, but it takes a lot of time. Like we're talking about, the biggest piece of advice I could offer new runners is patience. Once you can like figure out how to get into that groove and use running to like make yourself a better person, like I think that's what it's all about. Like what life lessons can you take out of the sport is one of the biggest like things that I think about.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, the topic of using running as a way to make yourself a better person, I can relate to that so much because I think both you and I mean, I don't fully know all your life experiences, but we every person, right? We do things that we're proud of, we do things that we regret, and sometimes though time quickly passes and it's really hard to acknowledge your successes and your failures in life. But what I've really enjoyed about running is that is your time to reflect on certain things you've done and actually use that as a coachable moment for yourself and understand, okay, I did this well at work, or I made this person feel good by doing this. And then, like, actually thinking about it at its core and then using that positive energy elsewhere in your life, or also anything negative that has came up or failures, like I had mentioned, understanding that at a higher level, evaluating it, and then doing what you can to then from that experience not repeat that in the future or improve on something in the future from those negative experiences. And I think, like I said, in life, you have those experiences and life gets at you so quickly, but sometimes it's hard for people to slow down and evaluate it. But with running, I think it's one of the best ways to just give you the time to really do that. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I definitely would. I love your positivity, man. By the way.
You got it, man.
But no, like one thing that like I need to do a better job of is I don't know, like we all read like those books. David Goggins is just such an easy person to use for like these kind of examples, but like a lot of ultra runners like him, even like myself, I'm really hard on myself and it's so really easy to spend your time out there thinking about like what could I have done better rather than like giving yourself that pat on the back sometimes. So like if you're out there listening, like make sure you're like celebrating your successes too, and not just like what do I need to get better at for tomorrow? Because it's really easy to just get caught up in that stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Because yeah, I think like also nowadays there's so many people who are thrown at us with all the content out there and you're seeing what other people are doing. So it's really easy to compare yourself and kind of get in this spiral of thoughts where you're just like, oh my God, like I need to be better. And it's so easy to be hard on yourself. But at the same time, like just do your best at everything you can and you'll see the happiness for the listener
Yeah,
said. And
totally, man.
yeah.
Like you're so on point with that. Like I'm at a point like in my life where I'm 27 and I'm like back in school and now I'm broke after having made money for a few years and it kind of sucks. And it's really hard to just accept the present and like some of the things that you got to do to like get to where you want to be. But like learning how to like be present in those situations is just really important. I mean, I'm working on that right now, but like, I don't know, just a tidbit for people.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'd be curious too. I mean, obviously you moved out to Denver. From the sounds of it, you're trying to really just like allow yourself to set yourself up for a life where you could see a lot of success with your passion for running. That's why you
Mhm.
worked at the shoe store. That's why you're working on some of the coaching now, creating content. I know you have a podcast with a couple episodes out. What have you thought through, or maybe it's in the planning stages? So, you know, humor me a little bit here with this question, but what are you hoping to get to a point at with running and with your career? I mean, is there like a product you want to make? Do you want to be like a big content creator? Because obviously we see a lot of people who are doing well in that area. Are you not really sure yet? I'd love to learn some of the things that you're working on or that you vision for yourself in the future.
Yeah, that's a good question. To be completely honest with you, I think I'm not 100% sure right now. I would love to like, I don't know, it's like weird. I'd love to like be a guy like Dean Karnazes, but I also don't want the fame with it.
Yeah.
Like I just want to show up to races and like be out there and like be a dirtbag with everyone else and like enjoy the outdoors. But at the same time, like I definitely I don't mean to sound egotistical, but I do believe like I'm trying to start a coaching business because I think I can make anyone around me a better runner. One of the things I try to focus on with that is not only like the physical aspect, but also like the mental game and like trying to hone in some of the topics that like we're touching on today. Um,
Yeah.
I'm not totally sure what I want to do. I think coaching is a good first step, and I think that the nutrition consulting I'd like to do down the road will be a really fun and unique way to like add value to the sport without like being a Killian or being a Jim Walmsley or being a Courtney. You know, like I'm just not fast enough to to be that, and that's okay. But I can still add value to the sport in other ways.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, if the fame too, like, is not important to you, the best thing that you can do to monetize, and obviously you know this, is simply just help other people and provide services that are solving and helping lives, solving problems and helping lives, that is. And
Yeah,
so, yeah, I mean, I think on the coaching side, if you're obviously someone who has ran all these races and you're going to continue doing that and you're seeing success, there's going to be many people who are going to want to work with you in your community that you're building. And then the same goes on the nutrition side, and one would argue maybe even more there, because I think that there is a lot that is spoken about with running plans and different strategies, but the nutrition side is something that I think a lot of people are a little fearful of, just because it's a controversial topic. It's not as safe, but hey, if you find a method that works and you're able to level with people and cater it to the individual, then I really think you could do really well there too, man. So I'm excited to see you really put some of this together, on your own pace, and do it the way you like it. And I'm excited to just learn someone who's trying to make it out there in this running space. And it sounds like you have to a degree, but I'm obviously you have some big plans to continue growing that. So I'm looking forward to seeing it.
yeah, appreciate it, man. How one of my questions for you is like, how do you like produce so much content? You probably get that question all the time. Like, you have so much great advice out there, but like, and there's that section of it, but there's also the section of like, I'm sure you have a full-time job too, and it's like, and you have friends and like
Yeah.
relationships and like, I mean, other stuff to take care of. How do you find the time to make all the content? Like, what drives you on that?
Yeah, no, I mean it's a great question, and yeah, like you said, I mean I work a full-time job, so I work 8 to 5, Monday through Fridays, which isn't crazy hours in the corporate world. I've had jobs where I've worked more than that, which I think having experiences for one in the past where I've worked 60, 65 hour week type jobs has really prepared me for this, because if you think about it, if you go from working 60 hours to 40 hours, 45 hours, that opens up 15 hours in your day. But I think some people, they never see that prior life. So it's all about perspective, right? So I think
Mhm.
that has helped me for one. I think two is just really being someone that is, I take the organization of my day really seriously, and I try to block it off, and I write a to-do list. Every morning I wake up, what do I want to do today? What am I trying to get accomplished? I'll be drinking my morning coffee or having oatmeal, whatever it is, and just writing down what it is I want to do. And I know I'm not the first person to say this, but it truly is something that works. And if I just say, okay, I'm working 9 hours a day, 9 hours today for my job, my full-time job. I'm going to be training for probably somewhere between 1 to 2 hours. I need to eat and relax as well and not like burn myself out for another 1 to 2 hours. Then I have another 1 to 2 hours that I'll be awake because, averaging 6 or 7 hours of sleep a night. I should probably shoot for 8, but I'm working on that.
Yeah.
Leaves me with probably an hour or two to work on the content. And then when I'm working on the content, it's just about just being really focused, right? Like putting my phone on do not disturb, getting the camera up and just getting after it rather than trying to overthink the ideas. I think the best ideas come from doing, not thinking sometimes, especially in content, because if the do isn't what I wanted it to be, well, I can always stop the camera and run the clip again, right? But if I'm sitting there for 30 minutes, fiddling my thumbs, thinking of, oh, should I do this? Oh, should I do that? Well, that's not going to get the reel up as quickly. So yeah, but I mean, it is hard. And I mean, I think also it's a matter of taking certain sacrifices. Like there are some days where I have friends who want to go out during the week or on the weekend. And sometimes I'm not doing those things like I may have used to because I do want to come out with consistent content. But I think too, for me, what has helped also is trying to multitask. Like if I'm running, making the content while I'm running. While I'm training, I need to do that either way. Well, I can make a video while I'm running. Or if I am walking to work, making content while I'm walking to work. If I'm sitting on the toilet, writing up the post, I mean, that's something
Dude,
that
you're a
a lot of
machine.
people, what was that?
Dude, you're a machine.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people only choose to do one thing at a time. And hey, if that's how your brain operates and that's how you work, no disrespect, right? But I think that has allowed me to really increase my efficiency. Um, but I mean, there are days that like I feel a little burnt out with a lot of this stuff. So it is something like my advice is how I'm able to get it done, but it doesn't mean that I don't also know how to take a step back when I'm feeling a little overwhelmed. But then when I may have like a light week at work, maybe around the holidays, and I have some time off, then maybe I'm putting 2 extra feet in and taking advantage of those opportunities.
I produce content like too sporadically right now. I'd love to get more consistent at it like you. Like, I don't know. I have some content on like my YouTube channel. If anyone's ever trying to look me up, it's all under Journey Running on YouTube or on like Spotify or Apple Podcast or like on Instagram. But uh, definitely need to do a better job. I also stole the name Ultramarathon on TikTok before TikTok blew up. So I feel like I need to do some more justice for that.
Wait. I gotta ask about. So you own the name Ultramarathon on
Yeah,
TikTok?
like back in like 2019, maybe before TikTok really blew up. I just went on TikTok one day, downloaded the app, got the name Ultramarathon because I saw it was still available, and then like deleted the app.
No way. That's
Terrible. No, it's terrible.
I mean, there's two
Uh,
things you could probably do with that, right? I mean, you could either own the fact that you own that name and use that as like I think if people see that name, right, they're like, well, this is probably an official page. If it is the one ultra marathon, then like you could do that, or maybe you could sell that to someone, right? And then money towards all the resources you need to like build your brand. Who knows? Like there could be a market for that. I'm telling you.
maybe I haven't really looked into selling it. I feel like if I finally got myself to just start posting more, it would pay off that way.
It probably would. But I know you brought up that you have some YouTube content. What type of videos are you releasing there for people who might want to see some of your content?
Yeah, for sure. So I try my best to take videos during the races that I run. Um, I have um, I have videos up of like running the Moab 240. I have a video up from my last race, the Mogia Monster 100, Silver Heels 100. Um, I have some videos up of like hiking, like the Tahoe Rim Trail, and then I've also started recording my podcast on like I just did it for the first time the other day. Recorded a video of it, so I'm going to be posting the podcast on YouTube as well.
Really loved hearing, all the different stories regarding some of your running journeys, and then just all this advice is really more than anything been super helpful. I'm sure there's so many people who are listening who are beginner runners or might be interested in taking that next leap towards some of these longer races, whether that's, maybe someone who's only done 5Ks and now because of this, they're going to want to try a half, or someone who's doing a half wants to take that next step towards a marathon, ultra marathons, etc. Is there anything else that you wanted to bring up while we have you here, Stefan?
Love what you do. I spent a lot of time over the last few years in particular. There's a podcast I really love. It's called The School of Greatness with Lewis Howes. And at the end of that podcast, he always asks his guests, like, what's your definition of greatness?
Yeah,
And like mine involves like loving what you do, like being really passionate about it, being very consistent at it over a long period of time. And yeah, consistency is the key, and you can't build greatness overnight. And that's why I always say it's consistency over a long period of time. And there's no point in being great if you don't love what you do. So love what you do, shoot for greatness. It doesn't have to be in running. You can become the person you want to be and become a better person through whatever it is that you are passionate about in life, whether it's running or something else. But just be dedicated to something and enjoy it. Be my last big piece of advice.
that's so well said. And I mean, I couldn't agree more. I mean, yeah, I mean, we obviously have a lot of listeners that are runners, but people who are not. And just to duplicate that, whether you're into running or you're into knitting, it doesn't matter. Just take that passion. If you really do genuinely enjoy it, do as much as you can with it. Try to meet people with that passion and just try to experience different things with that passion, maybe take some risks with that passion. And that's really, I think, one of the best ways to find fulfillment in life and just feel that sense of positivity on a daily basis. And just have a smile. I mean, that's going to really
Yeah,
that, right? So
yeah,
yeah, this has been awesome though, Stefan. For the people who would like to, I think there's a couple things that you could open up about here. People who want to utilize you for coaching, for running, or just see your content, how, what's the best place they can find you? What are some of the names of your different platforms? Would love to hear.
yeah. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share that. So my website for coaching is going to be journeyruncoaching.com. But additionally, if you're interested in just reaching out to me directly, there's the form on the website, or you can email me at journeyrunningsllc@gmail.com. You can find me on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Instagram as Journey Running. And my name is Stefan, Stefan, and then Schuster, Schuster, if you want to find my personal page. I think it's Stefan _ Schuster 135 on Instagram. So that's where you can find me. Before I go, I also just want to commend you, man. You have a really great platform. And I think in a world where like everyone wants to be so extreme and like everyone thinks that extreme is like sexy, but I feel like you're really like level headed. Like I think that like being level headed and like being able to weigh pros and cons of things and look at things objectively, I think you're really good at that. And I think that you have a lucky audience. And that you do a really good job at like what you do instead of just going out and saying some crazy ass shit that's like not that's just like not, I don't think, helpful.
That means
So
a
yeah,
lot.
hats off to you, man. You're doing great.
Yeah, no, I mean it's great to hear that. I mean, that's really the goal, right? Just to have an open mind with everything, because I think ultimately I only know so much, but I'm always learning, and I just want to really give people the experience that I get from running. And I mean, that's why I make the content, that's why I enjoy doing it. And I don't want to be someone I'm not on the platforms too at the same time. So I'm just sharing what I'm working on and what's been, keeping me in this game for as long as it has been. And yeah, like I said, just hearing those words from you, I mean, that's the stuff that drives me to continue doing this as well and providing value for people. So definitely more to come. But yeah, Stefan, so nice meeting you here today. It was an absolute pleasure. We'll stay connected. One thing I will mention is I'm actually going to be over in Denver in December. I just booked a trip there just to see my buddy who lives there, from like a Friday to Sunday. I don't know if you'll be in town or out of town, but if you want to hit a run, man, like I'd love to say what's up and just get some miles in while I'm there.
Yeah, that'd be great. Bring some trail shoes. I'll show you around.
Awesome, bro. Great.
And
Well,
I
yeah.
should say
What was
I'll be
that?
back. I'll be back in Jersey late December too, so we could always
Ah,
run
cool.
in New York too.
Yeah, I could show you the Hudson River, Central Park, the good spots.
There we
Uh,
go.
cool. Well, I'll hit you up on that. We'll stay connected for sure. And well, while you're working on all your stuff, man, like truly, if you need anything, if there's anything I could do to help, obviously busy guy, right? We all are, but anything that I can do in my control to repay the favor of you coming on, and I'm always happy to even do more. More than happy to, of course, help out a friend.
Yeah, for sure, man. I'm sure I'll have you on my podcast too. We'll get that set up soon.
Yeah, I would love to. Whenever you want to do that, just hit me up and we can make that happen.
Awesome. Sounds great.
Awesome.
Thank you again for having me.
You got it, Stefan. You have a good night, man.
You too.
All right, bye.